So happy to introduce my friend and a true local hero, Dr. Guillermo Linares, who has the distinction of being the first Dominican American elected to office in all the United States. As our city councilor, later went on to serve as Commissioner for Immigrant Affairs in the City of New York, and most recently became the Assemblyman-elect for the 72nd Assembly District. So congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. I bring greetings from Concerned Democratic Coalition. With no power clubs, we have one of the executive board members, former Assemblyman Brian Murtek, and we have some members here also. I appreciate very much the invitation, and I'm honored to be part of this panel. It's good to meet you, and we'll continue to do work together. Alan Warnick introduced me initially to a lot of work focusing on immigration in the early 80s. We're not going to reveal our ages, but it goes back a long way.
I was in high school then.
Yes.
Learning Spanish.
And I'm so glad that Angela is here as part of this panel, because she's doing tremendous work. And I look forward to working very closely with her. I figure that in the few minutes that I have, I want to just touch base a little bit about my last experience, having worked in city government as part of the cabinet in city government, representing 3 million immigrant New Yorkers. An immigrant is someone born outside the United States. If you add the children of those 3 million, 2/3 of all New Yorkers, by extension, are immigrants from throughout. And 500,000 of them are undocumented. Basically, in the way we can figure out, by looking at data and so forth, we figure 500,000 in New York City are undocumented. So I served 5 years as Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs. And the main responsibility of my office was to serve as a bridge between city government and the services that city government provides in immigrant communities, including the undocumented. And the main thing that guided the work that I did was a policy that we helped create in 1989. It's a privacy policy that basically mandates all city workers, in uniform and out of uniform, not to ask about immigration status. And if you suspect or realize that someone may be undocumented, not to share that information. The only exception is the discretion that the law gives law enforcement, the police department, upon an arrest of a New Yorker, to then, if that person is apprehended, sharing that information. There is discretion about asking at times. So, but that policy basically guided, and we saw Koch sign it initially, Dinkin signed it, Giuliani signed it, and the current mayor, Mayor Bloomberg, signed it. And every mayor sort of gave some higher stature to the office and its functioning operation. Under Mayor Bloomberg, the Office of Immigrant Affairs was made into a full office, a cabinet level position, and for the first time had a commissionership. When I came in, there was already an established commissioner. And so my responsibility was to help advise the mayor in terms of assuming position, in terms of immigrants, and his position in terms of a strong voice for the rest of the country and New York City as well, calling on immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, and was part of the effort undertaken under my leadership, but also calling on the DREAM Act to be passed, and also being a voice that try to, that attempts to tell the rest of the country and New Yorkers that immigrants are an asset to this country in every respect. And so that was part of what I was doing, but my main focus was to really help different agencies guide their policies to help facilitate access to services, health, education, social service, and also information that is critical for immigrants, and in terms of the police department, to develop relationship with immigrant communities. For example, we established the immigration unit within the police department, which has a group of officers that are as diverse as immigrant communities are, to really serve as connection, as liaison between immigrant communities and the police department. When we saw the massive mobilization that took place when there was an attempt to introduce legislation at the federal level, sort of criminalizing the presence of immigrants in the country, and you saw the mobilization, that was a clear sign that we were looking at something very dangerous for this country and for every city like New York and the rest of the country, all the states included. And what we're seeing now, I believe, is something that not only targets, and this is what I believe, undocumented immigrants, but it targets immigrants that are not yet citizens and have been here a long time and have been law-abiding or have been actually contributing to this country, have raised their family here. And there was a case, I think Angela was involved in this, where recently there was an arrest made of someone that had a gun in his store in 1982 and pled guilty of possessing a gun without permit. And he was picked up and arrested for deportation. And he's out now because there was mobilization on the community. But this is one case and example of how people who have contributed so much and have given so much and raised their families here and so forth, not yet citizens, they are now being picked up. So those are people that are here with documents and so forth. And even people who have become naturalized citizens may be the target. Because when you see what's happening in Arizona, and you see the mood of the country, and you see what happened in this past election, it is now what is at stake, is that the presence of someone that looks immigrant or like an immigrant, no matter what background you have, where you come from, whether you're a citizen or you were born here, if you look like that, then you can be profiled as having the presence of a criminal, and anyone can really pick you up. And so this is a very dangerous situation. And the only thing that I can say is that even in the city of New York, where we have policies that try to convey to immigrant New Yorkers and others who serve them in government, even in uniform, that we have policies where we want you to approach government. We want you not to be fearful. We want you to access the services, because the mission of a city government is to enhance the safety and the well-being of all the people who reside there. And when someone is afraid of approaching a police officer or a police precinct with critical information that may be used key for the safety of that neighborhood, or approaching a hospital, or approaching a school, or approaching for protection of any type, then you're promoting for people to go underground, and everybody then becomes at risk. And for a club like this, or for those of us who understand how dangerous that is, the only thing I can say is we have to mobilize, we have to engage, we need to also let our neighbors know that we have to be well informed and have access to not only the legal protections that we need to have, but to have access to a mechanism which allow us to act when we need to defend our civil rights, but also to act, to be proactive in action. Because until we get immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, this is going to go from bad to worse, and it's guaranteed that it's going to be that way because we saw what this election were about. So I think that we really need to look beyond what we can do individually. We need to look to create a movement that involves all of us to make sure that even here in New York City, we will not put up with all the protections we have. We will not put up with the aggressive enforcement that violates the fundamental and basic rights that we're entitled to.
Thank you so much. Thank you.